This book is... Wow. Hi, everyone. Okay, so this is the 21st chapter of Calling of Dragons. It's also for Gale. I'm going to do the epilogue in a separate video. Just heads up. Even though you're going to get these all anyway. Oh, God! I didn't even look at the chapter title, in which nobody's satisfied. This book is ruining me. No one except Morin and the other animals, Killer, Kazul, Scorn, and Horatio, understood what Trouble had asked, but everyone, even Vamus, could tell by their reactions that it was important. "All right, Hotshot, what did you find in the castle?" asked Scorn, switching her tail in annoyance at having to admit to so much curiosity in public. "One moment, please," Morin said. Quickly, she explained to Cimmerian, Talamain, Brandel, and Amory where Trouble had been and what he had just said. Cimmerian bit her lip, glanced at Vamus, and turned to Willin, can you keep this fellow under control and out of the way? He was working with the wizards, and I don't think he should hear this." "He may have some insight to offer, your majesty," said the elf. "However, if you wish it, I will do my best." "I'll get his insights later," Smith said grimly. "Get him out of here." "I'll help," Amory offered. "Me too," said Brandel. "I'd be quite happy to help, in fact." Vamus looked at the two fire witches, who were eyeing him the same way Murgatroyd and Chaos tended to eye a particularly plump mouse, and blanched. "Thank you," Cimmerian said to Brandel. "Just leave enough of him for me to get answers out of later." "I think we can manage that," said Brandel. Willin bowed, and the three of them marched Vamus off into the forest. Cimmerian turned back to Trouble. Morwen nodded at the cat. "Go ahead now, but slowly, so I can translate." Couldn't you just let them wonder?" asked Trouble. "All right. The castle's empty, except for the usual furniture and a couple of gooey wizard's robes. I guess Mendenbar melted a few of them before they got him." Got him?" Cimmerian said after Morin's translation. "What does he mean by that, Morin?" "If she doesn't interrupt, I'll tell you," Trouble said, plainly enjoying all the attention. I'd messed up that sentence. Trouble was plainly enjoying all the attention. "I didn't see any trace of Mendenbar, so I asked the gargoyle in the study, the one that answers the magic mirror, if he knew what happened. Apparently, the wizards didn't notice that it was intelligent, so they did quite a bit of talking in front of it." "What did they say?" Killer asked with the air of someone interested in spite of himself. "Oh, this and that. Most of it wasn't very important." Kazul put one forearm down next to Trouble and flexed claws that were almost as long as the cat's tail. "Little one, tell your story without these digressions, or I may lose what little patience the Society of Wizards has left me." "If you insist." Trouble stretched to show that even a dragon couldn't impress him, and then went on. "The gargoyle said I was right about the robes. Zeminar and his group lost 4 wizards before they managed to corner Mendenbar. The gargoyle knew about it because they all came into the study afterward to decide what to do next. Seems the wizards found out that they couldn't kill a king of the Enchanted Forest outright without messing up what they were doing in the forest, and Zeminar didn't want to just hold him prisoner because he was afraid we would come back any minute." Trouble shook his head in admiration. "You know, Mendenbar's almost as good as a cat." "At what?" asked Morwen. "Ugh, never mind. What did they do with him?" "Zeminar put him in storage," said Trouble. "What does that mean?" Cimmerian asked once Morwen had translated this. Trouble shrugged. "He sent Mendenbar somewhere where he couldn't make any difficulties while the wizards finished up with the forest. 'I'll put him through a door and then hide the door,' is what the gargoyle heard him say. Too bad Zeminar didn't work the spell in the study, where old Woodenhead could watch, or I might have been able to tell you what it means." "This doesn't make any sense." Cimmerian sounded thoroughly frustrated. "Of course it doesn't make sense," Scorn said. "Wizards don't have sense. If they did, they wouldn't make all these problems." Morwen did not translate Scorn's comment. Instead, she asked Trouble, "Where did the wizards do their spell? Could you tell?" "Piece of cake," Trouble said. "In the Grand Hall. The place reeked of recent spellcasting. And did you check the rest of the castle?" Morwen interrupted. "The Grand Hall is where Talamain did his wizard liquefaction spell, and you may have been sensing the residue from that." "Give me credit for some sense," Trouble said. "Besides, it's not that hard to tell Talamain's magic from wizards, even though they use some of his equipment." "I still don't understand," Killer complained. And you're hungry," said Scorn. "We know." "I don't understand either," said Cimmerian. "What does put him through a door and then hide the door mean?" "Talamain?" said Morwen. It sounds as if someone did a partial transportation spell, looped it, bound the residual to a temporary construct, and then..." Kazul cleared her throat pointedly. Talamain paused, frowned, and said crossly, "I don't know any other way to explain it. They used a transportation spell to send Mendenbar somewhere, only they stopped in the middle," Morwen suggested. "No, that would be unstable," Talamain said. "The field would collapse unless they looped it and bound the ends to something. It's theoretically possible, but it takes an enormous amount of power." Cimmerian glanced around over her shoulder at the destruction surrounding the castle. As much power as you'd get from soaking up a big chunk of the enchanted forest? I think they use most of that for the shield spell, Telemaine said, but if anyone could have done a looped transport, Zeminar could. After all, he was head wizard of the Society of Wizards. I don't care if he was first minister to the grand poobah of the great Cathayan Empire, Sermine said. How are we going to get Mendenbar out? We can't, Telemaine said. What? To dismantle the spell, we would need to be inside the castle. To get into the castle, we would have to get through the wizard's shield spell. The only thing besides the Society of Wizards themselves that can take down the shield spell is Mendenbar's sword, and none of us can use it. Cimrine looked appalled. Then Mendenbar's stuck forever. Or until he starves to death, Killer put in gloomily. How? Not... What is this book? Not necessarily, Morwen said. Everyone turned to look at her. In the first place, if Telemaine is right about what they did, Mendenbar won't starve. Loop transportation spell makes it temporarily unnecessary to eat. Telemaine nodded, pleased. Hirschenfeld's experiments proved it. They were quite definitive. In the second place, it's only true that none of us can use the sword yet. Morwen pushed the glasses firmly up and gave Cimrine a significant look. What? Oh my God. Oh. Morwen, you can't mean the baby, said Cimrine. Sounds reasonable to me, said Killer. It would, said Scorn. Telemaine frowned. I don't think it'll work, Morwen. The sword requires a certain level of deliberate control, and I doubt that a baby could provide coherent directions. We'll wait for him to grow, Kazul said. It won't take long. Maybe not by dragon standards, Cimrine said, but 15 or 16 years is a long time for people. I don't want to wait. What if he's a she? That shouldn't make any difference, Telemaine said. Excuse me, what's important to the sword is the bloodline and the personality. Or perhaps it's attitude that counts. I've never actually seen the linkage process that enables someone to use the sword, so I can't say for sure. No, said Cimrine, absolutely not. It would take too long and it's too iffy. And what if one of the wizards decides to come back and sneak into the castle to finish Mendenbar off? Have you got any better ideas? Kazul asked. How about lunch? Killer said pointedly. I love you, Killer. Aren't people supposed to think better when they're eaten? I do. It wouldn't take much, Scorn said. You're a rabbit. Not anymore. Killer's ears went limp and his wings drooped at the thought. I'm a something else. Lunch sounds like a very good idea to me, Kazul said, especially since we need to rush right in to rescue Mendenbar. Looking suddenly uneasy, Killer backed away from the dragon. All at once he stopped, and his eyes got very big. You can't eat me. I'm insubstantial. His muzzle twitched. I never thought there'd be anything good about that. I'm not interested in eating you, Kazul said. What I want is 6 gallons of Morwen's cider and a big helping of Cherry's Jubilee. Morwen frowned. I thought you were full. I am never too full for dessert, said the dragon, and chasing wizards is thirsty work. I suppose we might as well, Cimrine said. It doesn't look as if any of you will make much sense otherwise. Does that mean someone is going to fix me, said Killer. I thought you wanted to say insubstantial, Trouble said, with a sly glance in Kazul's direction. Not if it means I can't eat. Since this was an eminently reasonable attitude, and since Killer had been very patient, all things considered, Telemaine agreed to take a look at the spells afflicting Killer. While Kazul called in various dragons and fire witches to set up lunch, Telemaine unloaded a large number of peculiar-looking implements from his pockets and began stalking around the donkey, muttering under his breath. Morwen, after a moment's consideration, chose to help Telemaine rather than assist with lunch. It gave her a fighting chance of keeping the magician from getting so absorbed in studying the interconnecting layers of enchantment that he forgot about removing them. They were, it turned out, just in time. The various enchantments seemed almost to have taken on a life of their own, linking and intertwining with each other until there was no separating them. Fortunately, Killer's insubstantiality had only just begun to be incorporated into the main mass, but even so it took the combined efforts of Morwen and Telemaine to nullify it. The process was slow, and by the time they finished, they stood in the center of a circle of interested observers, attracted by the spectacle of a 6-foot-something blue donkey with wings blinking on and off as bits of the spell came loose. Phew, said Telemaine, when the last of the insubstantiality had been removed and cancelled out. That was more of a job than I expected. Can you stop now? Cimrine said. Lunch is ready. If you could leave the rest of the spells for afterward. I think we're going to have to leave the rest of the spells for good. Telemaine said, stowing his implements back in their appropriate pockets. What? Killer has so much magic stuck to him that the bottom layers have melted together, Morwen said. It's practically impossible to undo the spells he's under. We were lucky to get the top layer off. You mean I'm going to be a 7-foot, 11-inch... Counting the years. Bright blue floating donkey with oversized wings for the rest of my life? Killer wailed. Count your blessings, said Scorn. At least you're not insubstantial anymore. And you're not a rabbit, Trouble pointed out. That's a plus. But I'm supposed to be a rabbit. Quiet, Morwen told them sternly. As I was saying, undoing the spells is next to impossible, but moving them is elementary magic, Telemaine said, nodding. We won't even need any special equipment. But who are you thinking of moving them to? Morwen smiled. Cimmerian, would you ask Willen to bring Arona Famist over here for a moment, please? This won't take long, and then we can relax and have lunch. Oh my god. For a moment, Cimmerian and Telemaine stared at Morwen, and they began to smile too. It would be my pleasure, Cimmerian said, and called Willen over. A short time later, Famist appeared, flanked by Brandel and Amory. What do you want now? Famist asked. I demand that you send me home at once. In a minute, Morwen said. Stand over here by Killer. Trouble? Scorn? Right here, Scorn purred. Go ahead whenever you're ready. Good, Morwen raised her left hand, palm up, then flipped it over. Front to back, white to black, young to old, silver to gold. As she finished speaking, Killer began to glow green. The glow pulsed once, brightly, far enough for the edge to touch Vamis. Whoops, said Vamis. Eek, said Killer, and then an ordinary brown rabbit with a few faded patches of white-dyed fur dropped to the ground next to an oversized floating blue donkey with wings. Look, said Scorn, he's got a little bald patch between his ears. What? Ah, said Vamis, no, you can't do this to me. Want to bet? Said Trouble. Goodness, he looks silly, said Killer, twitching his nose. Is that really what I was like? Except for the bald patch, said Scorn. You can't leave me like this, Vamis cried. You wouldn't make me stay a donkey. You're not just a donkey, Morwen said, letting her smile grow. You're a 7-foot, bright blue, floating donkey with oversized wings, and as far as I'm concerned, you can stay that way for the rest of your life. Telemaine, have you got enough energy left to send him to the main square in his hometown? I believe I can manage that, Telemaine said. No, I'll be the laughingstock of the whole countryside, and how will I get people to pay attention to what I say? You won't, Brandel said, with considerable relish. No one will listen to someone who looks that silly. Morwen, it's perfect. It certainly is, Cimmerian said. How on earth did you think of it? It came to me a while back when Scorn said he was as dumb as that rabbit. Now all that's left is the problem of what to do about the castle. But though they discussed it over lunch, after lunch, and through the afternoon until dinner, no one could think of anything that might work. Telemaine spent an hour studying the shield spell, but he could not find any way to get rid of it. The dragons could not get close to it because the spell was too similar to the one on the wizard's staff and made them sneeze. The fire witch's magic just bounced off. In desperation, Cimmerian tried to stick Mendenbar's sword into the edge, but it stopped at the edge of the glow and refused to penetrate it. I think we're going to have to wait for the baby, Telemaine said finally. I'm not giving up yet, Cimmerian said. There's got to be some way to get in or to get Mendenbar out. Don't be so sure, Morwen said. Barrier spells frequently come with a time delay rather than any specific sort of key. I believe 100 years is the usual period. What? That normally applies to hedges, briars, not glowing magic shields. Still, I'm not giving up, Cimmerian repeated, and I'm certainly not waiting 100 years. And she didn't. For the next 2 months, while Telemaine and Morwen disposed of Vamis the donkey and sent Killer the rabbit back to his clover patch, while the dragons combed the enchanted forest for stray wizards, while the fire witches finished helping out and went home, or in some cases built new homes in the enchanted forest, Cimmerian tried everything anyone could think of to get herself through the wizard's shield. She had dwarves dig tunnels and birds dive at the top of the shield. She sprayed it with soapy lemon water and sprinkled it with powdered dragon scales, donated for the purpose by Kazul. She cast spells alone at midnight and noon in combination with Morwen, Telemaine, all of the fire witches, and several dragons. Nothing made any difference. Kazul left a squad of dragons to keep watch for wizards near the castle, and she herself visited frequently. Eventually, she persuaded Cimmerian to slow down at least until the baby was born. Since none of their attempts had shown any sign of success, Cimmerian's child seemed more and more to be their best hope of getting into the castle, rescuing Mendenbar, and defeating the wizards once and for all. Rumors began circulating, each purporting to give the real truth about the battle and the whereabouts of King Mendenbar. The Society of Wizards was too busy with its own affairs, choosing a new head wizard and recovering from the unexpected onslaught of dragons and fire witches to make new trouble for the time being. So the pause in the fighting stretched out longer and longer until it became a sort of uneasy, unofficial peace, and everyone waited. I am going to read the epilogue right now because I can't wait. What the